Jean-Pierre Kovacs, and welcome to Capital Conversations, a monthly deep dive that takes a 360 view of digital transformations in capital markets. With an unpredictable market, history has proven that business resilience is dependent on continued investment in technology. Together with our guests across corporate and investment banking, wealth management, asset management, and market infrastructure, we'll discuss how capital markets are innovating to weather the current market climate. Today, for this first episode, we'll start with investment banking, and I'm glad to be able to introduce you to Neil Marden, Chief Operating Officer. Hi, Neil. How are you?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and what you've been up to lately?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on here. It's a great idea and a fascinating topic. I think one that's been around a while and that's going to persist. So my background is I've been in financial services and capital markets for the last 20 plus years, principally as CFO, but more latterly as the COO. So I'm a qualified chartered accountant, and I've got a particular interest in technology development and innovation. So this topic is close to my heart. Over the last 10 years, I've done a significant amount of business transformation. And, I'm a firm believer that if you don't get your digital transformation journey right, then your business is not going to succeed. So, very, very, very interested in this conversation.
Right. So I'm just going to precise that you're on the trading side of investment banking, as opposed to the more the advisory side, which is probably suffering a bit more during this period. So let's start, with what does a digital transformation even mean in investment banking today?
So when I think of digital transformation, I don't think of it as a specific task or a specific project. It's clearly, a series of ongoing challenges that we have. It's digital transformation is a process. It's a process that helps your business adapt to changing needs of its clients, your regulators, your environment. It's ongoing, and you have to keep moving forward. If you don't keep moving forward, you are going to fall behind. The general pace of change and the proliferation of disruptors to the market is just changing everything we do, how we do it, and we really need to adapt and evolve. Otherwise, we become cost heavy, we become inefficient, and we won't survive in this space. There's also the expectation from regulators and other market participants that constantly pushing requirements for investment firms, for banks. There's an enormous amount of work that goes into regulatory change, for example. Just think of, MiFID II and ISO 222 over the last, year, or 2 years, 3 years. The amount of work that's gone into digital transformation just to keep up with those regulatory requirements, let alone, manage your business, try and generate new business. So, in summary, I think it's a continuous journey rather than a single standalone process. And technology is definitely the enabler for businesses to move forward.
For this journey, yeah. I like the fact that you highlighted the continuous improvement aspect of this, because I know you worked in a Japanese bank, and I think it's a very Japanese concept, the Kaizen, what they call Kaizen, this whole philosophy of continuous improvement. Which definitely apply here, and also like that you mentioned this adaptability, being able to adapt to in particular to new market configurations, which probably going to happen once the dust settles on the current uncertainty and new paradigms we probably establish. And there's probably two attitudes towards that. There's banks that are going just to try to save cost and wait and see what happens, and others that are going to prepare to make sure that the system is going to be nimble and that we'll be able to adapt to new opportunities and maybe even decommission some of the past activities that they had just to adapt to the new configurations.
Yeah, I think people need to realize it's not just about cost. There is investment required in digital transformation, and if you're going to get it right, you're going to have to invest. There are benefits that will come from automation and process improvement. But you do need to invest, and you need to invest in digital transformation. Otherwise, you will fall behind.
So let's start from the beginning of the how do we invest in this digital transformation? You have been in the CFO seat. You're a CEO. So, and these roles have traditionally a strong focus on cost control, operational risk. So, tell me, how do you convince a CFO and a CEO to embark on a multi-year digital transformation?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the world has changed, and we've all changed and adapted. And I think you'll struggle to find a CFO or a COO these days who isn't fully on board with the need to constantly drive your digital transformation agenda. I mean, it's a no-brainer, really. Organizations need to keep up to date. They need to be moving forward. The biggest challenge I've faced, and I think other people face, is that you have such a vast list of projects that you need to do under the digital transformation agenda. It's how do you prioritize what you're going to do? How do you get the things done? As organizations have become more digital and become more technology focused, there's a real bottleneck with technology staff and resources. Everyone in the organization is competing for the same set of resources, and banks have a finite set of resources to deploy on projects, and particularly in technology, where it's not just banks competing for those resources these days. There's lots of this. Every industry is tech heavy now. So if you talk to a front office head, clearly he's going to say to you, the biggest issue is we need to have this new client-led project going. We need to have this product offering out. We need to get it to market quick. Our business absolutely depends on it. And then you have this compliance head who'll be going, well, if we don't get this regulatory requirements sorted out, then we're going to have an issue with the regulator, and we could have our permissions removed. So that's key to our survival. So it really becomes this balancing act between, well, you want to drive the business, you've got regulatory requirements, you've got operational requirements to meet, and that's becoming particularly challenging, and particularly in smaller organizations where they have less resources. And a lot of the time, they have the same level of exacting requirements from the regulators and from the market expectations in terms of delivering. So what you find is that there's a disproportionate amount of resources that the firms have spent on getting the basics right. So, making sure trade settled properly, making sure the regulatory requirements are met. And there's little left over after that to, manage your client-driven innovation strategy or revenue strategy. So I think that's a real challenge that I've seen sitting on the CFO and COO seats, is that, how do you get those resources prioritized in the right place to kind of try and balance the revenue opportunities and, client opportunities with, meeting expectations of the market and the regulators.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think that's also the problem with we've seen with some neobanks, that they tried to develop really quickly and being global very quickly, and then suddenly they realized that they were not really compliant enough with it, and they got the regulator caught up with them, and suddenly they had to again review their strategy. And you're right, depending on your size. I remember that MiFID really started for some banks, really start some more innovative project. And well, in general, in investment banking, the pace of transformation has been relatively slow. Well, there was probably a burst of acceleration during COVID, but now it's slowing down again with the current configuration. So how could we accelerate the pace of transformations with banks?
So I think there's been so much change in regulation over the years that's really kind of hamstrung financial markets players quite a lot, trying to get their regulation through. We've seen MiFID, and we've seen ISO 222 changes, and that have really kind of used up resources. So I think a slowdown in regulatory change would help. I mean, there's discussion about Big Bang 2.0, potentially unwinding some of MiFID requirements. And hopefully, we're starting to see an environment where there's a slowdown in the requirements from the regulators in terms of what we need to evolve and develop. I think that's probably a little bit of wishful thinking, but that would certainly help give organizations, particularly the smaller ones, more opportunity to deploy their resources into kind of innovation and revenue generative ideas. I think another area is, the technology in industry and in financial services is quite fragmented. Banks either do their own thing, or there's some big, vendors out there. So I think, if firms started to work together on stuff, it would be helpful. Be cost effective. Would have more resources to deploy, particularly where there's no particular competitive advantage, where it's a utility function or where it's some kind of market activity that will benefit everyone, but doesn't get you more revenue, doesn't make you more competitive. So I think those are the areas that will help.
So particularly the operations, I guess, the operation side, and having a more, the STP reconciliations, all the downstream process, I guess.
Yeah, and even in front office activities, like book building across fixed income, we've seen, the fixed income market from a tech perspective is pretty fragmented. So things that would help everyone but doesn't give them a particular competitive advantage are certainly areas where collaboration amongst the players will definitely help. I think there is a natural challenge coming into investment banking. We've seen it in retail banking. We've seen a number of challenger banks coming up, the likes of Revolut and Starling, who've done a great job getting to market quickly. It's a good consumer experience for people using those products, and I think the retail banks in particular had to really up their interface with customers. And I think we're starting to see some of that in the investment banking space as these guys start to offer, products to businesses rather than just to kind of retail customers. That in itself will help. I think that will, force people to really push the agenda on getting their tech and their experiences up. And finally, I think fintech firms have a place to kind of help also move these things forward, particularly in the plumbing, investment banking plumbing, those things that aren't client focused or where there's particular intellectual property. I think that's fintech firms that can help solve banks' generic problems that everyone has. I think that there's a great opportunity there to help move that forward and help banks and investment firms solve some of those problems.
Yeah, and I know you have a special interest in fintechs, but so that's interesting. So they're not really competitors, but they're really enablers for the banks, and so you think that should be really part of the strategy of the investment banks, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously there's the disruptors and the challengers who are looking to take revenue away from banks and kind of do that side of the business. But there's a lot of fintech firms out there creating solutions and helping banks and investment firms develop their strategies. If you think about things like trade surveillance and monitoring, it's a difficult job for everyone. Everyone has got a requirement to do it. It's a challenging area for everyone when you've got voice to text, and you've got vast amounts of trade data to try and surveil. Someone who can come in and really help banks get this right, because there's no advantage to getting it right. It's you have to do. It's a regulatory requirement. You get it right, and that's the requirement. Those are the types of things where I think fintechs can really help solve problems. Other areas around data management is a particular big interest for me. I think it's a really challenging area for organizations, particularly banks that have so much data. And there's just been this huge growth in the amount of data we capture now for regulatory, but also for customer data. And solving some of those data problems using AI and machine learning to help kind of really interrogate that data. And if we can get data, proper golden source data, that's in a timely, near real time at least, can really start to help organizations solve their problems, not just their regulatory requirements, but also start to generate revenue opportunities by exploiting this vast amount of data that we're all capturing.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But probably some of banks are still far from that. So what would you say should be on the roadmap of a typical investment bank for 2023, for this year?
So I think some of the key things we need to focus on are there's some regulatory requirements coming up. So coming up, they're in progress. The regulator's very keen for organisations to sort out resilience. Climate change is top of the agenda. D&I, ESGs, those are really hot topics that for the regulators and for organisations now. We're all grappling with those issues. The challenge with these is it's not kind of project you can put in place and get it done. These are much more fundamental and holistic to organisations. You really need to be addressing these topics in everything the organisation does, from your vendor relationships all the way to your client relationships. You need to have resilience. You need to be thinking about climate change. You need to be thinking about diversity and ESGs. And I think having a good digital strategy will help you drive those agendas, because you'll have the data available. You'll be able to record and track how you're progressing against those. One of the real challenges is actually how do we know where we are with these things? And you really need the data to help you. And that again, around that data management is really important. I think as organizations focus on that data management, that's where the real opportunities for them are.
So let me just unpack some of the things that you said, because I think the idea of the fact that we have projects that are much more holistic in their nature, and they're cutting across these functions. Because I remember a few decades ago, it was really about, you could have projects that were looking at less of the pricing, less of the risk management, less of the booking, which were very much self-contained project. But now, yeah, as you said, if we say climate change, that's one way. If you need to have a new product, trading carbon credit, that means you need to have the connectivity maybe to new trading venues. I mean, you need also to have maybe a different STP for that, reporting, and suddenly it's going to affect your whole system, your whole platform. And that's probably exactly what you said. That means that you need to get your basics right? You need to have at least the basics function in place. You need to sort your data, but also you probably need to run this project. You need very much multidisciplinary teams to run, which is also another added complexity for these large projects. And I think also the tracking the performance, as you said, is really important. Make sure that these clearly defined outcomes are understood at the development team level, that they know how we're going to look at the return on investments of, for example, on your data program. Sometimes, I've seen putting all the data in a single repository without having a clear idea of how we're going to leverage this data doesn't necessarily provide, or it's sometimes difficult to explain the return on investment on this kind of programs.
Yeah.
Is there any or some of the technologies that you see having a particular transformative potential in the short or middle term?
I think just expanding on the data theme. I think if you can get that data accurate, timely, and you can rely on that data, that golden source we like to call it, then I think machine learning in particular, it's for automation and process improvement, and that is very good. AI again, will help certainly. I think more on the client initiatives, on seeing trends in the market, pulling in data from a disparate group of sources. I think so. I think machine learning and AI have a place to play, but you've got to get your data set right. So I think if you get that, you're focused on your strategy, then those are certainly tools that are going to be hugely beneficial. Solving that data problem, is a problem for organizations. And, what I've seen is proliferation of data and databases, and then it becomes not just complicated in terms of finding the right data, it becomes really complicated to manage and reconcile that type of data. So, solving that with, be it a data lake or virtualized data world environment, something that just gives you a clear insight on data that's accurate and you can really rely on it, I think is really important.
Absolutely. And I guess that's also part of the customer expectations, right? So do you think the customer expectations have changed, or where they are, or maybe even not just the customers, but maybe the employees actually also expectations have changed towards the systems?
Yeah, I think there's less tolerance certainly from customers and from employees in getting things wrong. On the customer side, on the trading, and that, you've got to get the basics right. Customers will not accept trade fails and a disorganized organization. I've seen clients walk away from poor client onboarding process. You give them too much hassle around KYC, and clients walk away. You need those processes to work efficiently. They're not revenue generative. They keep your clients, but they can also push clients away. So I think there's a definite requirement from clients that you get those things right. You get those things right, make sure they're efficient, and then you're going to keep your clients. If you want to generate new clients, well, that's a different story. You need to kind of be more innovative in terms of your product set and your service to clients. I think there was during COVID, I think people have moved away from that face-to-face client interaction. I think that will come back. I think people want to see their counterparts. I think they will be expecting more. They want to hear more about what they're doing around ESGs and climate change and SDGs. I think there's going to be an increased focus on that. And again, you're going to need the data. You're going to have to back it up. I think that sort of days of lip service to we're good at diversity. I think people are going to want to start to see action on that and start to see some tangible analytics with that. So getting all that information out in front of clients is definitely, it's going to become tougher, I think.
Yeah, and data is definitely on top of the agenda. Neil, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your insights on how digital transformations could be approached in investment banking. To all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Capital Conversations. Thank you for joining us today and looking forward to doing so next month.
Thanks. Bye, bro.